Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, May 12th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. We are inside 1 month until the start of the FIFA World Cup, and less than 5 weeks before the first game is played in Kansas City. Time for another check-in. Star columnist Vahe Gregorian joins me to discuss some recent trends about the event and how it may play out for fans coming to Kansas City. Last week, the Star and other outlets reported some discouraging news about hotel availability, in that there is availability, and also there had been some news about airline passenger traffic and ticket sales. It all served to slow the momentum of the World Cup and required leaders to respond to the news. Vahe and I talk about these issues and where things stand. You'll also hear from KC 2026 President Pam Kramer. She held a news conference late last week to address some of these issues. After our conversation, I'll tell you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. Hello, Vahe.
Hi, Blair. Boy, I really missed you today and yesterday.
Yeah, we've only spent the last 12 of the last 18 hours in the same place. But that's what happens when it's busy and there are games to be played at Kauffman Stadium and World Cup stories to be written from Kansas City Stadium. I was going to say GEHA Field at Arrowhead.
Get it straight, as if it's not enough of a stretch to figure that part out anyway, right? We've always struggled with where we wish for sponsors to pay us for these things instead of, I mean, we should convert it into print.
Right.
But at least the bat's being taken out of our hands on that by the FIFA folks.
It has. So we're at the stadium, at the Chiefs Stadium today. We're recording this on Monday, and they're well down the road. The Chiefs are in turning the stadium into handing the keys from the Chiefs to FIFA, as it was expressed to us. So, what does that mean? Sponsorship signs that you're used to seeing out there. Well, you won't see. You won't see the big T-Mobile sign above the stadium or the Ford sign. They will have World Cup sponsors on full display, not just in places where we're used to seeing big sponsor names at Chiefs games, but also the ribbon boards and maybe the Ring of Honor. What got determined there?
The Ring of Honor is in play for FIFA to use, and I don't know if the Chiefs fully know to what degree FIFA will exploit certain aspects of it, but that is a big, I looked this up, I think the term is fascia for what that part of the stadium is. I'm calling it the encircling area between decks. but that is, you can look at that and you can see it's a fertile place to have display whatever you display. And so it's a twofold effect, Blair. I think one that's really striking is the most obvious, right? Which is that it will, basically Chiefs advertising and branding will be replaced by FIFA advertising and branding. The more nuanced and sort of interesting question is how much will just Chiefs iconography in general be, sort of figuratively painted over with a broad brush. And one of the reasons I'm thinking of that is as we walked out today after getting a little tour, we walked up through the tunnel where the Chiefs come out. And as we looked at the images in there, we were kind of struck by, that home of the Chiefs thing that's overhead as they go out under, almost certainly would be something subject to be
being covered
as a FIFA thing. Now, I think it'd be pretty uniform what FIFA's doing around these things. What I don't know, I don't know why I'm going on this direction, but I'm doing it because that's how we talk. I don't know if it'll even be Kansas City FIFA, imagery as opposed to just sheer FIFA overall, FIFA 2026.
I think what you'll see in the stadium on the ribbon board is the name Kansas City, the way we see it at NCAA tournaments with Kansas City, where all the sponsorship from the building is gone, but you see Kansas City or Omaha or Des Moines on the, on the either one place on the court or on the message board.
Yeah.
under the scores table.
Yeah.
I think that's what you'll see in with the FIFA games.
And look, it's an interesting twist on this whole thing. It's fresh on our minds because we're both working on stories about it. But the thing I've been thinking about is that, of course, in that ring of honor of many of the most significant players in Chiefs history and coaches and such, is the name Lamar Hunt, without whom I think you can make a case that this event isn't happening just because of his fundamental role in the advent of soccer in this country. And you made a reference to this earlier that, it probably ought to be highlighted. But certainly it shouldn't be obscure. So if other names, at least just leave that name up there. Right. They gotta find a way to do something with that. And I do think it's an interesting thing, like to what degree the sort of the stuff that makes Arrowhead what it is doesn't need the labels, right? And to some degree, the architecture, to some degree,
right, shape of the stadium.
It's a living, breathing thing in some ways. So I'm trying to find the right way to finesse these points and what I'm writing. Any help appreciated.
Well, again, we were attending a press conference to discuss the transformation of the stadium from Arrowhead to Kansas City Stadium. And it occurred to me that we spent a lot of last week thinking about the transformation of the mood of the World Cup in Kansas City from one of a little uncertainty, but still a lot of excitement, to the response to some news that emerged last week about travel, mostly travel statistics. Yeah. Hotel bookings were not where they were expected to be. Airline bookings not where they were expected to be, and ticket prices for games throughout the FIFA, the World Cup, at every venue, including Kansas City, still too high.
Yeah.
And so I think that the combination of those stories really put a halt to, at least a temporary halt to, a lot of the enthusiasm that people have been feeling about the World Cup coming to Kansas City.
Yeah, I think, some kind of timeout or hiatus or halt, whatever, you want to call it. I do think it's very interesting sort of measure of human nature about how people react to these kind of things. I do think there's been, I don't know what the percentage would be, but people that just don't want this coming here, or they're skeptical from the start, or, really more the point, cynical from the start, that are sort of looking for the first signs of, blinking and say, well, see, this is what's going to happen. And I certainly don't want to be, naive, but I do feel like one of the things that KC 2026 CEO Pam Kramer said last week that I thought was a very sensible thing. I think she's a very poised and sensible and smart person. And one of the things she said, she didn't try to diminish that the hotel report was somewhat dismal. She just said, yes, that's a data point, and we think there are many data points, and proceeded to share some of those other data points, which I found a number of them persuasive, particularly the idea that 112 people from 112 countries have registered for FanFest, some things like that. I think also, you've probably thought about this, but I had not thought about this very much. I get that there obviously are pre-sales for the round of 32 game and the quarterfinal game, but would we not assume that once we know what countries are playing in these games, that there would then be tickets driven by that and travel driven by that? So that's an interesting part of this matrix that is part of why what I tried to write about was, can't we just see what's going to happen? I mean, it seems like there's some signs that things could not go perfectly, and that there may be fewer than 650,000 people here
spending $650 billion.
Right. But probably hundreds of thousands of people, whether it's 650, I don't know, but hundreds of thousands of people. We're still hosting the world here. Biggest event we'll ever have, I think. And the biggest sort of cultural opportunity you could imagine. I think all that is firmly in place.
No doubt about it. Let's hear what Pam Kramer had to say last week when she spoke to reporters about what you just talked about.
On to the World Cup. Lots of discussion this week about tourism and what that looks like. Certainly, those hotel numbers are a data point on how the local hotel community is feeling. And we've been talking to them. It is one data point. I think it's really important to look at all the data points we have. And I know Kathy Nelson from Visit KC talked about some of these yesterday, so I won't repeat what she said. I thought maybe it would be helpful for me to share a little World Cup specific information, some information we're getting from FIFA and that we're seeing in our own data set. So I'll start with match ticket data and some preliminary information that FIFA has shared with us that every match at Arrowhead is trending to be a sellout. And the majority of tickets are being purchased outside of the Kansas City metro area. So I think very encouraging news there. That is reflected in our own FIFA Fan Festival registrations, where we've had people register from 112 countries. Every state in the union shows people registering to come to the FIFA Fan Festival in Kansas City. We've had 3 of the dates, or premium products on 3 of the dates have sold out. So again, reflecting that strong demand coming in. The other piece, and I'm not sure if Kathy touched on this yesterday, but looking at the airline data, capacity, I believe at Kansas City's airport is up about 46,000 seats year over year. We're one of only 3 U.S. host cities to actually show an increase in capacity year over year, so really important. And then based on the information we're getting, it looks like bookings are also up. So not only capacity, but utilization of that capacity. So all of those positive indicators. And then I think there's some market dynamics at play here. The short-term rental capacity in the region has increased significantly. I actually think there's some new reports and information that have come out in the last 24 hours. Again, not only about capacity, but about utilization. So I think that's a factor here.
That was Pam Kramer, the president of KC 2026. We're here with Star columnist Vahe Gregorian talking World Cup. She highlighted some of the what I think was more positive trends about the numbers we were discussing. Look, there's no denying that. And I've looked this up. You can if you go into the Marriott or the Hilton website and try to find a kind of a high-end hotel in Kansas City, they say the night Argentina plays on June 16th, you can still get a room. Now, it's pretty darn expensive, like 3 to 4 times more than a regular room would be, hotel room would be for that night. And I don't know if they're asking for an X number of night minimum stay for this, but it seems to me that the hotels may have misplayed their hand on with this. I don't know if we're going to get 650,000 people here, but I've been told that you better be ready for the swarm of fans that are going to come from Argentina, and Dutch fans will be here with their Orange Army. And we'll see what England brings. Those are the 3, top 10 ranked teams that are going to have base camps here. England's the only one of the 3 not playing a game in Kansas City, so we'll have to see. There are some other headwinds to this. The fans of Algeria and Tunisia have been confronted with a $15,000 bond to enter the U.S., returned upon their departure. But what a discouragement that is.
I can't get over what an impediment that would be for 2 people to come. Well, for 1 to come, first of all, your sense of wanderlust may be curtailed by, right out of the chute, I have to do that. I don't know that I assume I get that money back, by the way. So, but even being able to front it is its own thing. So you're basically, kneecapping, or whatever the right term would be, 2 countries that are among the 7 we have playing here. So all these things, you're right. Headwinds was a term I thought that Kathy Nelson from the KC Sports Commission and Visit 2020, Visit KC, put to good use the other day. I think that's one of them. And look, people will accuse me of being political for saying this, but it is simply factual that right now what we've done with immigration and with our hostility towards visitors, that's been basically very directly described by the current administration. You can see polls, and you can see lots of anecdotal evidence that people are wondering whether they're welcome here. So let's see, I'm going to get gouged, and also I'm not welcome. So there's things that they're up against in every U.S. city right now. Maybe it's harder for our city as the smallest city and in some ways the most isolated city. Maybe those hit stronger here. I still don't think it needs to be defining, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. And maybe that's why the conversation's changed a little bit when we talk about the expected number of visitors here, less about the international visitors and more about, those who live in Chicago and Minneapolis and St. Louis and Denver and cities that did not land, or in the case of Chicago, didn't bid for World Cup
or
games,
St. Louis,
or St. Louis, right? Didn't, but you would think would want to, we're the closest city to a lot of these, to come watch a World Cup game or be part of the World Cup experience here. And I just get the sense that that's where that's kind of where the anticipation of big crowds is coming from.
Yeah, and look, a couple things. I think Kathy Nelson used this stat the other day. It struck me that she thought the number was there were 50 million people within a day's drive of Kansas City. I think that sounds about right. You're bringing in Chicago, or maybe it assumes places like Dallas. I don't know. But anyway, so there's that. But if our understanding is correct that the hotel prices have not quite come down the way they should, and if they are insisting on minimums, which we were told at one point was going on minimum night stay, I think that's something that remains problematic for the would-be visitor. And look, I mean, it'd be nice to sit down with a hotelier who could explain to us why they've thought that was the way to go. I feel like from the outside looking in, it doesn't seem to make too much sense to triple your prices instead of just adding $200 a night or $150. I mean, it just seems alienating to me.
And this is something we've experienced in our travels and what we do. When we've covered 5 Super Bowls, in the last 7 or 8 years, and I don't, and even though we don't always stay in hotels, when we have at big events like that, World Series, it wasn't triple what the going rate was.
I agree with you. It was a lot. It wasn't triple. And
NCAA tournaments, Final Fours,
all those things,
college football playoff games.
The only time I remember ever facing that was maybe 15, 20 years ago. I covered a Kentucky Derby, and it was, like $650 a night with a 3-night minimum, that kind of thing. And that's what this reminds me of. And I bet that's 3 times that today, So and this is maybe unfair to say to our Kansas City brethren, but I wish that part of our, this whole feeling of what our appeal is, right? Our welcoming, aspect is transferred to that. I wish that had been part of that spirit. And again, it may be a little unfair without talking to people. You explain the economics of that better to us, but it from the outside looking in seems like a real miss on how they calculated that.
And maybe the market will adjust here in the final month before.
Yeah, maybe.
Before. And so we were at the Chiefs today. There are other events happening the next, starting to feel a little more World Cup-y, don't you think?
Yes, for sure. And it's funny you say it that way. I thought about that just today. We both had the benefit now of sort of being at the epicenter, by being in Kansas City Stadium today, but sort of being there, right? And seeing this is what everything is going to revolve around. But also flying into the airport recently and seeing the front porch as really pretty strikingly laid out. I mean, it as we've talked about, reminds us of going to a Final Four city or a Olympic city and seeing that it's unmistakable and kind of dazzling in a good way. So we've sort of seen both ends. Now what we're waiting to see is how does everything else work? You know, it's transportation, security, but it does, to your point, make me feel like, okay, we've turned a page. You know, we're just over a month to that first game. I mean, it's basically right on the doorstep.
Great conversation as always with Star columnist Vahe Gregorian. Thanks, Vahe.
Thanks, Blair.
Here's what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. No league milks publicity from non-games quite like the NFL, and this week is another example. On Thursday, the league will release its full schedule of regular season games for 2026, and the audience for that program will be huge. We know who the Chiefs are playing this season. There are 8 home games and 9 away. And as of Tuesday morning, we know the opening opponent. The Chiefs will meet their AFC West rival, the Denver Broncos, on Monday Night Football, set for September 14th. What the NFL didn't tell us in this announcement is the site of the game. That'll probably come on Thursday. As a reminder, the Chiefs will play their division opponents home and away, along with the Cardinals, the 49ers, the Colts, the Jets, and the Patriots at Arrowhead Stadium. And then on the road, they'll take on the Bills, the Dolphins, the Bengals, the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Atlanta Falcons. That we know. We just don't know the order of the games and the kickoff times. We'll find out Thursday and likely have a few morsels of schedule information along the way. Get well soon wishes go to University of Missouri running back Ahmad Hardy, who suffered a gunshot wound to his leg after a concert in Mississippi last weekend. Hardy underwent surgery and was listed in stable condition. He's a terrific player, a first-team All-SEC running back last season, his first year at Mizzou. No word yet on his recovery timetable. And a shout-out to Royal shortstop Bobby Witt Jr. He was named American League Player of the Week last week, and among the highlights, an inside-the-park home run against the Detroit Tigers, the second in Witt's career. That'll do it for this week. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you heard or have a suggestion, let us know by leaving a rating, a review, or both. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC staff of Gabriella Lacey, Suzanne Hogan, and Irvin Zhang, and to our editors, Hannah Wise, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.